my name is Chris Perry. I'm with CAD Soft Consulting. I'm a building construction solutions engineer with the Autodesk reseller. We're going to continue on with the second item of our three-part series here. This one will be top steps to implementing BIM workflows. Purpose here today is to just try to give you some pointers that I found as I've consulted to other of our clientele, the things that have worked best for them when they're starting to move to the idea of building information modeling. Now BIM, Building Information Modeling, as Autodesk coined that acronym years ago, it gives us several challenges. We've been so used to a design and documentation process that when we throw in a new piece of software, if our current software doesn't fit the solution and idea of BIM, then we've got a whole new practice and idea of thinking. And it's not just the idea that it's the technical side, it's also the business side. How does our workflow process take advantage of this, and how do we actually make it happen? So some of the top items I'll offer to you, first off and foremost, and it is from the technical side to begin with, we want to eliminate the software hurdle. Okay, we want to actually make the selection. It doesn't necessarily have to be an Autodesk solution. I would probably prefer that, but that's my realm of expertise. So in thinking of BIM, it's not a particular piece of software, although many people think of Revit as being the BIM software in the Autodesk lineup. It's not solely true. There are several pieces of software that we can utilize to fit into the idea of a building information modeling workflow. Now once we've selected a software that will be appropriate, and we can kind of leave the specifics to a different video discussion, but we don't want to leave this to any specific person, and who usually gets saddled with that is the IT director with the company, if you have one, whether they're internal or they're outsourced. They are not typically doing this type of work daily. They have their specific approach to things and what their role is within and for the company. And we don't want to stick them with the idea that, like we used to, install our plotter drivers and all the other things. That's not what they can do with the idea of BIM. Again, it's not a piece of software. It's a business mindset that we have to adapt to. But for this business mindset, we need to think of this from the top down. What is it we currently do? What is it, what I like to call our as-is state? We have to think about that and what we deliver. What is our end deliverable to customers for the process of documentation, permitting, and construction administration, whatever it may be. And we need to kind of reverse engineer that. So what we need to do is we know where we need to get to with a new piece of software and process. We need to build a roadmap on how to get there. So the idea of the roadmap is going to be the real benefit, that we are actually making a plan. Now, often with a new piece of software, it's very tempting, especially for those of us on the technical side, to jump in both feet first and try to learn everything there is to learn. And now, that's not terribly capable. I've been asked, specific to Revit, how long does it take to actually implement this into a new business workflow? And the only real value answer that I've come up with is around 2 years' time. It can take that long to cycle through several projects that will actually present you with the roadblocks that we have to find solutions for. So it usually takes a period of time in use of a new piece of software or in a modeled workflow that I can find solutions. But we can get running quickly and right off the bat. But I like to offer my clientele to use a staged approach. Find the items, learn overall about the software that we're going to be utilizing with a BIM workflow, and find the items that will be most immediately beneficial. Obviously on an architectural side, or from a structural standpoint, those modeling tools that are easiest to work with and easiest to transition from a previous CAD type workflow, and how we can still get our documentation out. We want to focus with the idea of how we make them readable, how they match our own standards, defining standardization that we're going to utilize in a BIM workflow. Remember the days of CAD and developing CAD standards manuals and then inadvertently, whether intentionally or not, putting them on the shelf and they just start gathering dust. This isn't something we can do with the idea of building information modeling. If we're going to define that standard, which we will need to do, and then we need to actually follow that standard and guideline as we onboard additional people. In that staged approach, you might use small team groups. You might have one team that is most most likely to adapt to new technology and process. Let them be the superstars and pilot forward, and then they can be the internal trainers of the teams that will follow them. So that staged approach not only of tools and elements to be utilized, but also in the idea of teams. So in utilizing these particular pieces of software, we got to think about the hardware. All right, we said to don't leave it solely up to the IT manager, but here's where the IT manager is going to be very valuable. Don't shortcut this hardware. We don't want to go out and buy low specification equipment. We're looking at software that is heavily demanded on resources from our computers, and we're going to need to respond and plan for that. Once we have all of those items in place, then finally we're ready to launch with a pilot. All right, the idea of a pilot, you can select something small, but many of us are always on deadlines. We're always on tight budgets. We don't have a chance. Many people like to do a just-in-time training. They like to do a pilot that is live and on deadline. I recommend people don't do that, but sometimes we can't get away from it. An ideal scenario that I have been able to utilize with a few customers, as with myself, is something I call a past pilot project. It's a parallel scenario where it's something I've completed before. And the idea that I have all of that knowledge and things already worked out, I just need to work that and massage that into the new software and workflow process. So if I can utilize a pilot in that method, then that's going to be a real advantage. So to kind of recap of these items, these offered top steps, don't skimp on your software. You certainly want to make the appropriate choice for how you're going to deliver this, the people you're going to collaborate with. Don't leave it to a source that doesn't normally work with these things. Develop a roadmap built upon whatever you determine to be an as-is state, so you have an effective plan to follow. You might choose a staged approach. Don't shortcut your hardware and your resources when you're actually implementing and rolling out the software to be used. And then in a pilot, choose an appropriate pilot that will still allow you to meet your deadlines and your budgets. So hopefully these items you'll find useful as far as implementing BIM into your business workflow processes.